Ruth chapter 3. And I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about the Kinsman Redeemer, and I've left you a lot of stuff for your own Bible study. There's a long list. That whole first side of the outline is all about Kinsman Redeemer. I'm going to just explain a little bit, and I left you a lot for your own personal study. And so we're not going to jump through all of that. That was actually almost the whole outline itself of that. And so it's like, well, that's my introduction. So I'm going to shrink that down a little bit. So I've cut off quite a few verses that I have on there and quite a few details, but the thing is that I wanted you to at least have it as a theme throughout the Bible about redemption, because the Bible is a book that tells us about redemption. Right? There are many major themes. One of them begins in Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve fall. And what do they need? They need redemption, because they now have fallen to sin and to death, and they are no longer in relationship with God. And they need to be redeemed back from the life that they have chosen, the slavery they've put themselves under, slavery under death and sin. They need to be redeemed out of that to be enslaved instead to God. As Romans would say, a lot of us are like, wait, I don't want to be enslaved. We are. So we are to serve a Lord and Master. We will serve a Lord and Master. Let's serve a good Lord and Master. Our God is a good Lord and Master. And so this idea of redemption is all throughout as God has sent His Son to redeem people, to redeem sinners, to redeem enemies of His. And so this theme is all over the Bible. But specifically, what we ran across was introduced at the end of chapter 2 and then is brought back in chapter 3, this idea of a Kinsman Redeemer. So I'm going to have you look at a couple of pieces of Leviticus chapter 25. And Leviticus 25, starting in verse 23, says, "The land, moreover, shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine." That's God speaking. We're talking about all of the promised land. And this is before they're in the land. They're wandering around the desert, and God is giving this direction before they get in the land. "The land, moreover, it shall not be sold permanently." So like, you're not going to go and take the land that you've inherited and then sell it off to the highest bidder and make a profit on it, those sort of things. No, that is your inheritance. And actually, it's your inheritance that you're borrowing, because who owns the land? God does. The land, moreover, shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. For you are but sojourners and foreign residents with me. In other words, you are just visitors to my land. And even if you live there the whole time, all of your life, you live there for 80 years, but God owns the land from beginning to end. It's His land. And so He says, you're borrowing my land, and so you're going to go by my rules. "Thus, for every piece of land of your possession, you shall provide for the redemption of the land." That is, that you're going to make sure that land continues on in your inheritance. And so He begins to explain, "If a brother of yours becomes so poor he has to sell part of his possession of land, then his nearest kinsman redeemer is to come and redeem what his brother has sold." It is the responsibility of the nearest family member to go and redeem that land back out of the mortgage. Like, you go and mortgage it, and so somebody else owns it. Because the person was not able to afford it, then the nearest kinsman is then to go and pay off that mortgage and redeem it back for the family. So the land stays within the family. Or in case a man has no kinsman redeemer, but recovers his means and finds sufficient payment for its redemption, then you shall calculate the years since its sale and return the balance to the man to whom he sold it, and so return to his possession of land. And what this is it's an instruction to those who end up purchasing the land from somebody else, is that you're purchasing a number of years on that land. You're not purchasing the land, it's not yours. Because who owns the land? God does. You are leasing the land. And so when you, quote unquote, purchase land, you actually are leasing the land from God for a certain number of years. And the number of years is based upon what's called the year of Jubilee. Every 50th year, the land is all supposed to go back to the family. And if the family member had enslaved themselves, that family member then is restored back to his land as a free man as well. And so the year of Jubilee sets everything back in place for the right inheritance. It's a reset. And so when you're calculating how much you're going to pay for land, if it's only 6 or 7 years before the Jubilee, you're going to pay less for that land because you only get 6 or 7 years of use out of it. But if you're doing it at year 10, you got 40 years of use, so you're going to pay more for that land. And then if the person that sold it gains means back, then he's going to look and say, okay, well, you got to use it for 10 years. There's still 30 years left on that, so I need to pay you for the 30 years that's left and pay you back. In this way, you redeem back the land, and the land remains within the family. The inheritance continues on within the family. And that's the idea that's there. And so the Kinsman Redeemer is in a position to redeem the land for the family name. The Kinsman Redeemer can do the same thing, and later on talks about that they can do the same thing for the man who's gone to slavery. The Kinsman Redeemer can go and buy the man back out of slavery for whatever the balance of years left on his slavery was. And so the idea is that God is giving the land to the Israelites. The Israelites are to keep it in perpetuity and hand it down from generation to generation and keep it within their family. And they couldn't even sell it off to other Jews, or Hebrews, not Jews at this point, other Hebrews. They couldn't even just sell it off to that for perpetuity. The only thing they could sell off is if you had a house inside a city and you weren't a Levite. So any of the other tribes, if you had a house inside the city, that could be sold back and forth and be sold for whatever the price is, and it's to that other person for forever until they sell it. So that's the exception that's there. But when it comes to the land that's going to be used to grow crops or to shepherd or whatever it is that's used for, that land is the inheritance of that family. That's important because then when you get to the end of the Pentateuch, you get in Numbers and then going into Joshua, you have the division of the land based upon the tribes, and then those tribes divide the land up by the families. And so the idea is that when that happens, then once you have it, that is your family's land. So the Kinsman Redeemer is meant to do that. And the Kinsman Redeemer is acting on God's behalf to restore the land back to who God had deeded it to begin with. The other thing that gets mixed into this sometimes is what's called the levirate marriage. That's there in Deuteronomy 25. And that's the idea that there's a Kinsman Redeemer aspect where levirate is a Latin word meaning brother-in-law. Where if a woman's husband dies and they're childless, then the next brother up is then to establish that line by marrying her and having children. And sometimes it depends on the time period, that aspect of this. Sometimes it was the nearest single, and sometimes it was just the nearest brother. So, and so different time periods and different aspects had it where they were single, or might have a case where the brother has basically the second wife. That is really the first brother's wife, and just establishing the line, and after that goes on. Different time periods have it different ways. In general, the idea is that nearest single is what's being put out here, but it gets changed back and forth within the culture itself. So the idea, once again, though, is the same as the Kinsman Redeemer before, which is you're continuing the line of inheritance for the land. The land may continue in the family as God indeed it. And so, whether it be the Kinsman Redeemer aspect for the land or for slavery, or whether it be the levirate marriage, Kinsman Redeemer idea, then either way, ultimately is about the land that God has deeded staying within the line. and the continuation of the line of the family. That line would not die out in Israel. And so that's focused on all this. I put some things there about the Redeemer theme of what the Redeemer looks like, and the Redeemer is to be a reflection of God. Not a perfect reflection, but he's acting in God's stead to put things back to how God had it. And so he's God's human actor to do what God had intended to begin with. And so redemption, first of all, is rooted in covenantal love, which is, I'm going to do what's right no matter what the cost is for me. Because of a love and a faithfulness that is there to what is true and good and right. And we see that in Deuteronomy 7. God redeems from death to life, and redeems us to be his portion and to be his dwelling place, his tabernacle. And in that, he shows that he protects, he leads, he teaches, he elects us to a purpose and then fulfills that purpose in us. He's faithful. He is the perfect one, where he's eternal, he's the creator. He is that one who redeems us as the one true God, versus human ones, which are not that, but are to reflect that. I'm acting on behalf of God, who is the one true God, so therefore I'm going to obey him in covenant relationship with him. I'm going to act as his hand in this. One of the things that God does within us is to move our hearts that we want to see our eternal Redeemer, even as we yearn for redemption here on earth. And then we see Jesus as that Redeemer. He's the one who redeems us from the curse of the law. Not just from the curse of the law, but unto adoption as sons. So far better than just redeems us from the curse of the law and just leaves us. He redeems us from the curse of the law and brings us into familial relationship, full restoration. And in that, then, we're redeemed from lawlessness into a zeal for holiness. We're totally changed. We're not the same anymore. We're redeemed by the precious blood of the Lamb of God, and so the redemption cost for us is far greater than just the cost for the Lamb. And once again, then the Kinsman Redeemer is reflecting that God is a covenantal God who redeems his people, though they are not worthy of being redeemed, and is high-cost redemption that he gives. And so the Kinsman Redeemer is supposed to go with that same selflessness and redeem for his family members, to put things back into the family of the truth. That's the picture of that redemption and that Kinsman Redeemer. So with that as the backdrop, that takes us then to Ruth chapter 3. So I ask you to please stand with me and honor to God in his word as I read out of Ruth 3. It says, Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, to Ruth, My daughter, shall I not seek a state of rest for you, that may be well with you? And now, is not Boaz our kinsman, with whose young women you were? Behold, he is winnowing barley at the threshing floor tonight. So you shall wash yourself, and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes. You shall go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Let it be that when he lies down, you shall know the place where he lies, and you shall go and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will tell you what you shall do. Ruth said to her, All that you say I will do. So Ruth went down to the threshing floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law had commanded her. And Boaz ate and drank, and his heart was merry. And he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. And she came secretly and uncovered his feet and lay down. Then it happened in the middle of the night that the man was startled and bent forward and said, Behold, a woman was lying at his feet. And he said, Who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your maidservant. So spread your wing over your maidservant, for you are a kinsman redeemer. Then he said, May you be blessed of Yahweh, my daughter, for you have shown your last loving kindness to be better than the first, but not going after young men, whether poor or rich. So now, my daughter, do not fear. All that you say I will do for you, for all my people within the gates of the city know that you are a woman of excellence. But now it is true, I am a kinsman redeemer. However, there is a kinsman redeemer closer than I. Stay this night, and it will be in the morning that if he will redeem you, good, let him redeem you. But if he does not desire to redeem you, then I will redeem you, as Yahweh lives. Lie down until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning and rose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. He said, give me the cloak that is on you and hold it. So she held it. He measured 6 measures of barley and placed it on her. Then she went to the city. Then she came to her mother-in-law and she said, how did it go, my daughter? She told her all the man had done for her. She said, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me. For he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty. Then she said, sit then, my daughter, until you know how the matter falls into place. For the man will not remain quiet until he has finished the matter today. And so, Father, we come to you in this narrative, this historical account of Ruth and Boaz, asking that by your Spirit that you would give us clarity to see and to understand, that by your Spirit you would work in us to receive your word as you've given it to us, to believe what you have given us, to walk in the truths that are here, to discern how this passage is meant for us to walk in. And so do a work in each of us today that we may read and understand by your Spirit, that you may be glorified in your church this week as we seek our Redeemer day after day, and then as we also show our Redeemer day after day to those around us. For truly, we live among so many who need you to redeem them. May you do a work in us through this. Guard my words. May you be glorified now in Jesus' name. So when we left off, we find that Ruth has come home with lots, and Naomi has said, okay, who gave you all this? Where were you working? She told her it was Boaz, and she says that in verse 20 of chapter 2, the man is our relative, he is one of our kinsman redeemers. And so you already get a sense that Naomi is got some things clicking in her head about how things are working here. Where we get to now, when we get to chapter 3, is we're several weeks later, because now we're getting near the end of the harvest time. They're winnowing the grains, and in that then, this is getting near the end of the time where Ruth will be working at Boaz's field. From what has been provided, Ruth and Naomi do not have to worry about food for a very long time. They have been provided way more grain than they will need in the near future. They have been taken care of well. And so there's not that worry there anymore. They're in Naomi's home, which is her home. So that's not going anywhere because it's a Elimelech's home that had to be given back to them to live in for Naomi as the wife of Elimelech. And so what we have then is that they're provided for in those ways, but there's still greater provision that's needed. And that's where we pick up with Naomi. And that's in chapter 3, verse 1. Naomi, her mother-in-law, says to Ruth, my daughter, shall I not seek a state of rest for you that may be well with you? She watches her daughter go day after day, go work like crazy, work harder than her sons did, is the inference that we get by the time we get to the end of the book. And does this out of her care for Naomi and provides for what they need through all this. And she looks and says, you know what, I need to do what I can to provide a state of rest for you, that you may instead have your own household, that you may have the blessing that I prayed for you back in chapter 1, that you may have your own husband and your own family and children while running around, that you may be established within a home rather than continuing to just go and work to care for me. So there's a great care that's here for Naomi as she looks toward the welfare of Ruth, my daughter shall I not seek a state of rest for you that may be well with you. And so now she explains her plan. Now, is not Boaz our kinsman with whose young women you were? Behold, he is winnowing barley at the threshing floor tonight. And that just makes you stop to think for a second. Naomi has not just got some general plan up in the air. How does she know where Boaz is going to be tonight? She's been doing some homework. She's active in this. She doesn't just have a general plan. She's like, I am doing everything to make sure I've got the exact plan. Here's what the strategy is because I've studied it out. She has been talking to the other people around, to the other ladies possibly. We don't know. It doesn't give us the background. We can infer things, but what we do know is that Naomi was not just sitting on her hands. Naomi has been busy trying to figure things out for the rest that she sees that Ruth, that in her opinion Ruth deserves. And so she has figured out, I know where Boaz is going to be, and this is going to be the perfect night for you to go and actually meet with him. He's going to be winnowing barley at the threshing floor tonight. So you shall wash yourself and anoint yourself and put on your best clothes, and you shall go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Now, in there's some basic common sense, right, that we all have, which is what we give to young people, right? If you're going to go meet to try and have a date or that sort of thing, you want to get yourself dressed up nicely, neatly. The best clothes aspect that's on there, that really is not what we would think of as best clothes. This is a heavy mantle garment that would cover. Part of it is just going to be out at night, so keep her warm, but also covers her as is typical in Eastern societies with women who are not married. And so this is not that she's putting on her best clothes like in a way that's going to be seductive in any way. She is under something that's pretty heavy, but it is not what she would wear to go to the fields and things like that. It's something that she would have only for the best occasions when she's going out into public, and she has to be kept a certain way during her time in public as a non-married woman. And so just want to try and make sure that our minds are not in Western thought. This is a different world, a different thought process. And so the other thing to remember is that she's going at night. And we live in a world where there's lots of light in the middle of the night. That's why we have like 24-hour things going on in cities, that sort of thing. That is not so in this world. People went to bed when it got dark. Why? Because you couldn't do a whole lot. You didn't want to stay up much past the time it got dark because oil was an expense. And so the light, and to burn that off for light, you need to conserve that so you're not giving off a major expense. So it is not going to be well lit in this barn area where they're going to winnow the grain. So her getting dressed up and everything like that is about her being proper in society. And being that she's not really going to be seen, you'll notice what she's supposed to do. She's to wash herself, and the idea of anointing is a perfumed oil that's put on. And so basically, what's the only sense that Boaz will have of her is the nose. Not going to see her really. He's going to sense her being down there and kick her probably, but other than that, he's got a nose. He's not going to see her. She's not all dolled up and that sort of thing. He's not putting on makeup and all that sort of thing. And that's a whole different discussion from what I'm saying in this context. Naomi is being wise and saying, you don't want to smell like you just came off of working the field. You're going to wash yourself up. You're going to be perfumed and oiled nicely so that you're not offensive. Like the entrance of you shouldn't be the smell that you have coming off the field. And you're going to wear this proper item that is heavy duty. I mean, it is not. Once she's on the floor, she's just a lump on there. So just kind of put some context in that for us. And as she goes, she is not to make herself known to the man until, so you shall wash yourself, anoint yourself, put on your best clothes, go down to the threshing floor. You do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. And so the whole thing is for her to stay in the background. Everybody pretty much knows who she is, so she stays in the background, stays out of sight of everything, and watches. And then she says, let it be that when he lies down, you shall know the place where he lies, and you shall go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he'll tell you what you shall do. And this has to do with some sort of custom that has to do with seeking a kinsman redeemer. We don't know, we don't understand. It's not anywhere else. This is not prescriptive, right? This is descriptive. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean it's something we're prescribed to do. So this is not a normal way that we would say, this is how you find a husband. Go lie down at his feet, and, see what happens in the middle of the night. That's a bad idea, right? But there's something about this that is specific to the culture that we don't have an insight into, except for that it could be taken as impropriety, as we see later on. But there's no impropriety in the actual act itself. It would be in the way people perceive it. The idea of a woman going to where the grains are, where the grain piles are, where there's a bunch of men laying around in the middle of the night. That doesn't look good, right? And the fact that she's out in the middle of the night, that doesn't look good. But those are things that do not look good. They look more like a harlot than like a woman of propriety. So there are some things that don't look good, but the actual act that she's doing is not an impropriety. Something the culture allows this as part of her seeking this kinsman redeemer aspect. Because that last part, you're going to lie down at his feet, and then he will tell you what you shall do. In other words, Boaz will understand what's happening here. He understands this cultural aspect. And so Ruth says, I'll do what you say. She goes down on the floor and does according to all that her mother-in-law had commanded her. And Boaz ate and drank, and his heart was merry, and he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. He came secretly in and covered his feet and lay down. One of the things to catch here is that this celebration of the grain would have been a major celebration, because what do we know has been happening in Bethlehem for years prior? Famine. So obviously the year before it probably didn't decently good, because Naomi knew that the Lord had come and blessed the land. But they'd had years of famine they've been dealing with. So this successful harvest would have been a great celebration for Boaz, for all his workers, for all the community, for all the different people that are farming. This would have been a great celebration that we've been blessed again. We have what we need. We have more than we have been given abundant blessings by God. He's returned the house of bread to abundance. And so there's a reason for this celebration that's here. It was normal for the men to go and lie the different heaps of grain to protect them from people coming through and deciding to take all the grain. And so that's what these guys are doing. That Boaz is part of the men. He doesn't just send it to them. He's part of them, even though he's the master. He is there with them. We saw that already in the way he eats with them, and talks with them, and is there with his workers. So he is part of them doing this. And he lies down at the bottom of at the base of one of these piles, these heaps. And she goes and uncovers his feet and lays down after he'd fallen asleep. In the middle of the night, the man was startled and bent forward, and behold, a woman was lying at his feet. And this is pitch black, this is dark. So when he looks, all he sees is a lump. He doesn't know male, female, or anything. He just knows there's somebody there. He said, "Who are you?" Which makes sense. And she answered, "I am Ruth, your maidservant, so spread your wing over your maidservant, for you are a kinsman redeemer." And that use of the term, "spread your wing over your maidservant," should awaken in us a remembrance. It should remind us of what Boaz had said to Ruth in 2 verse 12. Where he says, "May Yahweh fully repay your work, and may your wages be full from Yahweh, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge." And so, in doing this, she is taking that turn of phrase and saying, I've come underneath Yahweh's wings, but I'm particularly asking that you be Yahweh's instrument in my life as a wing covenant. And Boaz understands. Verse 6 says, for you are a kinsman redeemer. So he understands exactly what's going on, and his response is an example of true hesed, of true covenantal love. Just watch. It says, may you be blessed of Yahweh, my daughter. You have shown your last loving kindness to be better than the first, by not going after young men, whether poor or rich. So now, my daughter, do not fear all you say I will do for you. For all my people within the gates of the city know that you are a woman of excellence. But now it is true, I am a kinsman redeemer. However, there is a kinsman redeemer closer than I. Say this night, and it will be in the morning that if he will redeem you, good, let him redeem you. But if he does not desire to redeem you, then I'll redeem you as Yahweh lives. Lie down until morning. So in that whole sentence, notice what he says. He is amazed by the fact that she does this. And we'll come back to that in a second. But there is another kinsman redeemer closer. He has already said, one way or the other, you will be taken care of. I would like to, but there's somebody closer, so we're going to do this the right way. I'm going to bring it to you. And so rather than Ruth having to go to that other kinsman redeemer herself and go through this whole process all over again with a guy she doesn't know, instead, he offers to then be her advocate. I will take this up for you. I will advocate for you. I will go to the kinsman redeemer and see if he will be the one to cover you, both in taking care of the land and in taking care of you in marriage. And so he offers that, knowing that he may desire it himself, but what's more important to him is that things are done rightly and that they're truly taken care of in the right way. Saying everything's above board. And so there's a covenantal love that he establishes there of, I will love you even if it's not to my benefit. And he's already been doing that because he's been acting as a kinsman redeemer all along. He's been providing for them and caring for them and been sacrificing for them for their benefit. Already doing that which a kinsman redeemer should do. So he has been one de facto. But now this goes a step further where he advocates willing to give over to the person who has the legal right. Without arguing about it, as long as she is taken care of, the land's taken care of, that goes with that. Because those go hand in hand. With it, there's a little more though, that where it says, you have shown your loving kindness to be better than the first by not going after young men or the poor or rich. What does he mean by that? Well, the first loving kindness is the one he talks about, which is where she showed loving kindness to Naomi by sacrificing her own home and her own ways and giving up everything to go with Naomi to then be the one to care for Naomi. Without any hope of ever having a family or home herself, she went to care for Naomi and to be among people that were strange to her and to come underneath a God who was not her own originally, but had become her own through Naomi's teachings. And so we have that she has already shown love in that way. Why is this showing greater love? Well, because Ruth does not have an expectation or a necessity to be married in a levirate manner. There's no requirement of that upon her. It is, she's the wife of the son of the man who's been widowed, of the woman who's been widowed. That man. And so she's an outside source coming in. She does not have a requirement. There's no brothers. There's no levirate directly. She can go and get married to anybody. And she's young, so she has a lot of different choices out there. And so with that, what we see is that he sees, look, I'm an older guy. So, whatever ideas you have about Boaz, he's not a young man. He's not, strapping 28-year-old with abs and have a still and everything like that. No, he's probably in his young 40s, maybe. He's established. He calls her daughter for a reason because there's a generation difference there. he's older than her by a significant amount. Just round numbers, probably a little over 20 years. Because she is just barely up for teenage years, probably. Probably 20 or 21, so he's 20 years older. So he's not a young man. She has options. She could go find other men that are more wealthy, or she could find young men that are more vigorous. And he says, instead, because of your care and your love for your mom and for your mother-in-law, you're willing to come to me as a kinsman redeemer that you don't have to come here. That's Naomi's business. That's not your business. You're free to go wherever you want to. That you love your mother-in-law enough to then come to me as an older man and submit to me to be your kinsman redeemer and your husband. And so we see Naomi's love for Ruth and trying to make sure that Ruth is cared for and no longer have to work her knuckles off. You see Ruth's love for Naomi and being willing to come and marry this kinsman redeemer who will also care for Naomi. And so loving kindness is all over this chapter. This hesed love, this covenantal love that is faithful to the end, no matter the cost. And so he sees that, he recognizes that there is a different redeemer that's coming, but he's going to deal with that and advocate. The other thing we see is what we saw in chapter 2, verse 1, Boaz was a man of excellence. Here, she's a woman of excellence, as we see in verse 11. I mentioned that before. She's a woman of excellence, so much so that people in the gates of the city proclaim forth, she's a woman of excellence. It's good news. Two people of great integrity. So we get to the main part there where she goes and lays at his feet till morning and rises up at the very beginning of dawn before anybody can recognize one another. And Boaz says, don't let it be known that a woman came to trust me for. Protect her reputation, but also protect the whole situation so that the other redeemer doesn't feel like, wait a second, what happened at the threshing floor? And you want me to marry her? But I'm not so sure about that, right? It gives a clear opening for the man, for them to have a real conversation. And so, in keeping that quiet, it makes it so it's actually a fair conversation when we get to chapter 4. And a fair decision by the other redeemer. He has an open decision to make. And then Boaz sends her back. Loads up the cloak, sends her back. 6 measures of barley. That tells us, like, we've already seen that Ruth must be pretty strong for what she already carried. Here there's another 50 to 60 pounds of grain that she's taking back. She is not a dainty creature. She's a strong, hard worker. And so she is taking this back to her mother-in-law. Notice that then she comes to her mother-in-law and says, and Naomi says, how did it go? And Ruth told her that all the man had done for her, didn't hold anything back. She said, and these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty. And the writer here is doing this on purpose to point us back to chapter 1, verse 21, right? What did Naomi say? I went away full and I came back empty. And the purpose of the writer is to say, she's not empty. She's being provided for. So constantly, through Ruth, she's being provided for all that she needs, so that she's not empty at all. She actually is being filled up to fullness. It's like a down payment for what is to come. And Naomi in her wisdom says, sit down, my daughter. Don't go working today. Sit down until you know how the matter falls into place. For the man will not remain quiet until he has finished the matter today. In other words, today you are going to have a husband. I don't know who it is, but you will have a husband at the end of this day. Not necessarily married, but be betrothed. And there's a certainty to that. And so we're going to get into that last part, which is also then going to prepare us for Christmas, because it's going to lead to a lineage that's going to be that's going to lead to a true Redeemer. But Boaz is this picture of a Redeemer, and as so, he acts as a Redeemer before he's actually the Redeemer. There's another human Redeemer, but what we actually see is that there's a true Redeemer for Ruth and Naomi. There's a true Redeemer for all that are involved. And that true Redeemer is Yahweh. He's in the background. He's in the background working everything out. His hand is constantly working. And so it points to us as we're looking through something like this. These are just daily things. This should not be part of our history that we know, except for the fact that the Spirit has preserved this for us. They were just normal, everyday people. But normal, everyday people experience peace and protection and leading and rescue in this life. We experience redemption in all sorts of little ways by people around us who do good and bless us. Now, what we need to recognize as believers is that when we experience these things, yes, we should give thanks to those people who do it. That is a right, proper thing to do. We give thanks to them. And what we also recognize is that there is one who appointed them to do it, whether they knew it or not. They may not have any idea who God is, or they may have rejected God, but it doesn't change that the sovereign Lord has appointed them to be a redeeming finger in our lives, because our Lord loves us. He has a covenantal love toward us, where He takes all the details, all the little things in life, and blesses His people with them in ways we just don't see often. So stop and say thank you to the person, but also stop and say thank you to God, because He provided for that bit of redemption in the midst of a broken world. He has appointed these vehicles for a blessing like it. The second thing, as we have looked at this, is that Ruth and Naomi needed physical redemption. That is true. But their greater redemptive need was for their sin and the wages of sin. They were just like the rest of us. When we go and have a prayer, not this week because of Thanksgiving service, but the next week, we'll be in Psalm 14, which is clear that everybody rejects God. Everybody's a sinner. Ruth and Naomi were no different. They needed a greater redemption than they even knew. So, only Yahweh can redeem from sin and the grave. And that's why, even as we look at this, this is pointing to a greater Redeemer. Boaz is a great example, but he is pointing to actually one who's of his own line. His seed, many generations to come from this, is Jesus, who is the true Redeemer. Who redeems not just from widowhood and difficulty, but He redeems from sin and the grave. That's what I put out there with the verses there in Galatians, right? Jesus redeems from the curse of the law unto redemption, adoption of sin, as sons. And we see a picture of that in Revelation, as it pictures the Lamb of God there at the throne, and the angelic beings bow down before Him and worship Him. They sing out, "Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain and purchased for God with your blood a people from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You made them to be a kingdom and priests for a God that will reign upon the earth." So He is the one who redeems. And ultimately, Ruth and Naomi are types for us. Naomi is a Hebrew. Ruth is what would later be called a Gentile. She's a Moabitess. But who is the one who is the Redeemer of both of them? Yes, physically Boaz, but the reality is God Himself. That's why it is Yahweh under whose wings they've taken refuge. Whether Jew or Gentile, they typify what is to be, which is that whether you're Hebrew or Gentile, you come underneath one Redeemer, because all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And as Romans 10:11 paint a picture, whether you're Jew or Gentile, you've all sinned. And whether Jew or Gentile, you have one way of salvation. And God has granted mercy to both of you through Jesus Christ, His Son. And so that is being pointed to as we look at this, Redeemer that's being presented here. This picture of a Redeemer is pointing to the true Redeemer who redeems all people, whether Moabites or whether Americans, whatever background is here. There's one Redeemer for us. And so that message is throughout Ruth, and it's right here very strongly for us, that this redemption, this loving kindness of the Redeemer is for all, is for each of us. And it's for us to share with others, because whether you're a Hebrew or Moabite or American, you need that Redeemer. So we have loved ones who need that Redeemer. That Redeemer is offering that instant love to them as well, through us. So there's great hope in there. There's great reminder of God's provision through other people, blessing, redemption. There's great reminder of the true Redeemer, Jesus, that we may be thankful to Him. Thanks to God for He is good, His loving kindness endures forever, His seeing through His redemption. So may that be the hearts of us as His people. And ask I lead you to come on forward as we close our time. Father, thank you so much for the gift of your Son, Jesus. It's one who is the indescribable gift of a Redeemer, the one who rescues and saves sinners like us. And we thank you for the beautiful story of Ruth that reminds us and shows us of what true covenantal love looks like, what loving kindness is. And shows us what a Redeemer looks like. And in doing so, points us not to a man, for all men are imperfect, even Boaz here. But you are the perfect Redeemer. So, those who have believed, we come to you as ones who are redeemed only through you. And we're so thankful and amazed. And then what we see is that you didn't redeem us on one day and only, but you keep rescuing and redeeming us day after day. And yes, it is your sovereign working in the heavens that's working. It's the work of Jesus on the cross constantly working. But you then display it and work it out in our lives through people everywhere, through circumstances everywhere. Your fingerprints all over our lives to bring daily redemption, to bring daily hope. And so thank you. Open our eyes to see these things this week, that we may be thankful, that we may be aware of how great and good your salvation of us is. And Lord, may that then turn our hearts toward compassion toward those who don't know you. They don't have that redemption. No matter how good their lives may be here, it is a merely temporal aspect. They only have a lease on their life. There's a permanency to come. So may they find their true redemption in you. May we be messengers of that redemption. So thank you. Thank you for your goodness in showing this to us today. Be glorified in your church as we walk in your redemption.